for the independent podcaster who's listening and they're kind of wondering, hey, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Like, where should they start thinking about their marketing strategy?
Well, it's got to start with your ideal client. That is or ideal listener. This is the framework that you're going to build your marketing strategy around and how to talk to your people, quote unquote. And this is something, I approached my podcasts as a fun thing that didn't have anything to do with my business. And after our first season, I was like, oh, maybe we should kind of treat this like a business and maybe we could make some money from this. And it's not just a fun thing that we're doing. So after season 1, we actually developed a marketing plan. So we interviewed our top listeners. So the people that were kind of interacting with us and talking with us, and engaging with us. Oh, did you have a question, Christine?
Did you interview them on your show or interview them off your show?
So it was off our show. We DM'd them. Most of them were on our Instagram, and we asked, hey, can we pick your brain about our podcast? It seems like you listen a lot. You're a fan. And I think, interviewed about 4 people. I have a 5-page questionnaire kind of freebie that I'm happy to give to you guys, your listeners. And this freebie it'll have a guideline of questions. But again, you want to kind of just enter into that space of very curious being. Just ask all the questions, pick their brain, because you're going to find some gems in there that you had no idea that your ideal listener was thinking. And this can really set your podcast on a different path. It did ours. When we asked our ideal clients about our podcast, they actually didn't like that we had so many guests on. They wanted to hear me and Sarah more. And so now we're a little more picky about our guests and how often we bring them on. And we start to warm them up, like prepare them. Hey, we might be having a guest on, and we kind of lead them into that. And it's been a substantial change for us in our listenership. So that is where you want to start. And through that questionnaire, you're going to find out, are they hanging out on Instagram, or are they on YouTube? Are they Redditors? Are they, what other podcasts are they listening to? If you find other podcasts that they listen to in other genres, start bringing those in as guests, start partnering up with those other podcasts, because there's probably similarities between your 2 audiences then. And really find that common thread that's sort of weaving throughout your interviewees.
I work with a number of podcasters who really want to have it all figured out. And they're like, okay, this is my strategy. This is it. This is what I want to do. And I'm like, great. So did you survey your audience? I'm like, oh, no, I didn't do that. I was like, okay, well, we should probably back up. Survey your audience. And there's a couple different ways to do this. We could do it on Facebook. You could email the people who you've emailed in the past. You don't necessarily have to have an email list, but I bet you got a bunch of emails in whatever email you use the most. And just, you could email them, email people, and just ask them questions like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. This is what I was thinking. What do you think? And maybe even create a short Google form survey to do that. As you grow in your podcasting journey, your show might change. And all of that research that you did at the beginning,
it's going to change
over the years, because people podcast for years after years on end. And so as you grow, I'm sure your audience is going to grow, and some people may stay with you, some people may fade away. And then it's, how do I figure out where my new audience is? Are they still out there? What do I do now?
And are they still thinking the same thing that they did in the beginning? And this is, always go back and visit those ideal listeners and talk to them, and the new ones that cycle through. And, we do it after and at the end of each season. It just, that natural break just makes sense for us. But you can always, say every 7 episodes or every 10 episodes, I'm going to ask a couple of people some questions and just chit chat for them, just 15 minutes of their time, pick their brain, and make those adjustments, those little micro adjustments. I think it's so important.
Yeah. Me too. And I think that's great advice. And I wouldn't be afraid if your podcast changes. Like it likely
Oh,
will.
embrace that. Yeah,
Like,
I hope it
yeah.
does.
Like you might start with like hour-long episodes and then they might turn into 30-minute episodes. Like, oops.
Yeah.
Like it turns out my audience likes shorter episodes than longer episodes. And like, or maybe there's a mixed bag. Maybe people love when you have guests, or maybe people love solo episodes. Like it just changes and changes and changes. So I just think that's so interesting and important to keep surveying your audience.